What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today we're going to be having a deep look at the Cold-Blooded perk in Black Ops 4. A lot of people have been coming to me asking if this perk is broken, why it's not working, and protecting them from streaks. So today we're going to be breaking down exactly what's going on with this perk to see if it's really worth using or if it is actually kind of broken. Now, the thing that I'm hearing about a lot is people are saying that they're running their Cold-Blooded class and they're still dying to enemy streaks, even the AI streaks like attack choppers, for instance. The reason they're confused about this is in the past with Call of Duty, most of the time the Cold-Blooded or Blind Eye, the type of perk that protects you from streaks, will completely protect you from streaks, so you would never die to an AI streak if you were running the right perk. Cold-Blooded in Black Ops 4 just gives you increased resistance to enemy streaks rather than complete immunity from those streaks. So today we're going to be testing what this increased resistance actually is, how effective it is against all of the different streaks where it makes sense to test Cold-Blooded against, as well as a bunch of the specialist abilities because it does also to some extent counter those abilities. So first up we have the RCXD, and the first clip here is when the enemy doesn't have Cold-Blooded on. You can see there's a red diamond on them. They're really easy to find with this red diamond. Now when the enemy has Cold-Blooded equipped, you'll see that there's still that red diamond. So Cold-Blooded doesn't do anything at all to help you against RCXDs. So if you're surprised that you're getting killed by RCXDs when you're running Cold-Blooded, well, this is why. Moving on to the dart. The dart is actually very interesting, at least in this custom game. Without the enemy using Cold-Blooded, I didn't get a red diamond or any sort of targeting system whatsoever. Same thing goes with Cold-Blooded, there was no targeting system whatsoever, so Cold-Blooded once again doesn't have any effect, but it looks like you don't need Cold-Blooded in order to counter that dart. Next up we have Hellstorm, and there's a very important distinction between having Cold-Blooded and not having Cold-Blooded when going up against a Hellstorm. When you don't have Cold-Blooded on, you will have the red square so the enemy can see where you are, and also you'll see the white square that appears. This means that he can lock onto you, and when he presses R2, it will lock onto you and that will follow you and end up killing you almost 100% of the time. When you have Cold-Blooded equipped, you still will have that red diamond on you, so he'll still be able to see where you are, but he can't lock onto you with the Hellstorm. He might still get lucky when he breaks it apart and it still might kill you. And of course, he can also fly it directly into you and still get the kill on you, so you're not completely immune to a Hellstorm, but it is pretty helpful because he can't actually lock onto you with it. He has to manually aim it at you. Next up we have Lightning Strike, and when you first pull up the Lightning Strike for the first time, you get a ping. This ping will show you the location of the enemies on the map, but this only happens the first time you pull this out. So you can't spam it and abuse it to find out where the enemies are all the time by just constantly opening up your Lightning Strike menu. It only works the first time, and it turns out Cold-Blooded has no effect whatsoever on this ping. You will still ping on that map when the enemy pulls that Lightning Strike out for the first time. So Cold-Blooded does absolutely nothing for you against a Lightning Strike. This brings us to the Sentry Gun, and as you can see here, when you come around the corner without Cold-Blooded equipped, it gives you about 1 second before it realizes you're there, and then it starts aiming at you and it kills you. With Cold-Blooded though, this time extends to about 3 seconds, so you have plenty of time to get a rocket shot off or whatever you want to do against that Sentry Gun, or if you don't have a rocket, you can just run away if you didn't realize the Sentry Gun was there, so it is actually quite effective against Sentry Guns, but of course, you're not immune to them. This brings us to the Drone Squad, and as you can see here, without Cold-Blooded, the moment you come around that corner, again, you might have about 1 second before they react and start locking onto you. Turns out, it's pretty much exactly the same with Cold-Blooded. There was no noticeable difference whatsoever, both with or without Cold-Blooded, and therefore, Cold-Blooded is not an effective counter to the Drone Squad. Now let's have a look at the Mantis, and first up, we're looking at the Mantis if it is not controlled by an enemy player, so it's AI at this point. When you come around the corner, once again, without Cold-Blooded, you seem to have about 1 second before it locks onto you and gets the kill on you. Whereas with Cold-Blooded, once again, we see a bit more of a delay, more like 3 seconds or so. So it's pretty much the same as with the Sentry turret. It gives you a bit more time to get that rocket shot off or just turn around and get yourself out of there. So that's what happens when the Mantis is AI controlled. Now let's have a look at what it looks like if you're controlling the Mantis against somebody that doesn't have Cold-Blooded. You'll see that they, by default, don't have any sort of targeting system on them, but if you hold L1 or the aim button, you will end up locking onto them and a red square will appear. When the enemy has Cold-Blooded, you don't have this ability to lock onto them, so no red square will appear. You can't lock on and like fire near them and then it will track onto them. You have to shoot them directly with the Mantis. You have to be a lot more accurate. So Cold-Blooded helps maybe a very small amount, but I think a lot of people that use the Mantis and control it manually, they don't even bother locking on. They just kind of come around the corner and spam it. So realistically speaking, I don't think Cold-Blooded is going to save you too many times against a player-controlled Mantis. Moving on to the sniper's nest, when you don't have cold-blooded equipped, the sniper's nest seems to start shooting at you pretty much immediately as you expose yourself from cover, but it's not always accurate on the first shot. Sometimes it'll miss a couple shots on you, but it will kill you fairly quickly. With cold-blooded, it seems to have a bit of a delay where it doesn't start shooting at you immediately, and also it seems that it's a lot less accurate on you. It takes a lot more shots for that sniper's nest to end up hitting you. This could just be due to some inconsistencies with the AI, but I really do feel that cold-blooded will make the snipers within the sniper's nest less accurate. So generally speaking, you'll be able to survive out in the open against a sniper's nest a lot longer when you have cold-blooded equipped. This brings us to the attack chopper, and this is the one that a lot of people are concerned about because the attack chopper is very powerful in its current state, and it can be difficult to shoot down even with cold-blooded if you're using a launcher. Now, without cold-blooded, the chopper starts shooting pretty much immediately when you expose yourself to it, but it's not always immediately accurate. It does have to turn so that it's facing in your direction before it will actually hit you. So there's some inconsistency here, but if the chopper happens to be looking in your direction when you expose yourself to it, it can kill you in the blink of an eye. With cold-blooded, it looks like once again we get that roughly 2 to 3 seconds or so where the chopper just ignores your existence. After that though, it will lock on just as fast and it'll end up killing you. So I would say against the chopper, cold-blooded is great just for getting shots onto that chopper. If you're actively trying to shoot it down, it's awesome because it gives you that time to lock on and get the shot on it. But as far as just using it as a passive ability so you can still just run around the map while there's a chopper in the air, it's probably not your best bet. This brings us to the strike team, and as you can see here, without cold-blooded, pretty much the moment you come around the corner and the strike team can see you, they lock on and they kill you quite fast. With cold-blooded, I've noticed that they also start shooting at you pretty much immediately as you expose yourself to them, but for whatever reason, they just turn into recruit bots against you. Like, you can run circles around them a lot of the time, and they will shoot at you, but they're not very accurate, they're kind of dumb, and you can pretty much just run right past them most of the time. Moving on to the Thresher, based on my tests, cold-blooded doesn't really seem to do much to help you here. The Thresher seems just as likely to not kill you when you're standing out in the open when you don't have cold-blooded versus when you have cold-blooded equipped. It seems like it's fairly random, and most of the time, even with cold-blooded, if you're out in the open, the Thresher will still kill you. So finally, for Scorestreaks, before we get into some of the abilities, we have the gunship. And with the gunship, you get the infrared camera so you can see enemies glowing in white, as well as you once again get that red diamond around your enemies. It turns out, even with cold-blooded, it looks exactly the same to the person controlling the gunship, and there doesn't even seem to be a delay on that. Immediately when you spawn, that red diamond appears and you'll be glowing white. Cold-blooded doesn't seem to do anything at all to help you against a gunship. So those are all the Scorestreaks, and generally against Scorestreaks, cold-blooded isn't going to be helping you a whole lot. There's some Scorestreaks where cold-blooded gives you that little bit of extra time to get a rocket shot off on them, but aside from that, it's not going to save you too much against many of the streaks in the game. Now let's have a look at a couple of the abilities that made sense to test with cold-blooded. First up, we have Nomad's Dog, and I did kind of cover this in a previous video already, but when you don't have cold-blooded equipped, the moment you get within a radius of the dog, she will lock onto you immediately and come at you. She doesn't even need to have a direct line of sight on you, you just have to be within a certain radius of her. When you equip cold-blooded, it seems like it takes her about 3 seconds or so to realize that you're around her, and then she will lock onto you and she will end up killing you. So oftentimes cold-blooded is enough for you to get a bunch of shots on her so that you can finish her off before she gets to you, or oftentimes in team-based modes, she will end up going straight for your teammates before you because your teammates are probably not going to be running cold-blooded, which should give you plenty of time to finish her off. Now, I did test a bunch of the other specialist abilities as well as power weapons, and cold-blooded didn't really seem to help with anything else aside from Prophet's Seeker Mine. Without cold-blooded, that Seeker Mine will immediately lock onto you very, very quickly and come straight for you and end up shocking you. When you have cold-blooded equipped, it does take it a bit more time before it realizes you're there and then locks on and comes at you. And it might not look too much different in the clips because in the cold-blooded clip here, the Seeker Mine was just kind of on its own going in a straight line. It didn't actually realize I was standing there until much later on. And you can see this and also hear this. The Seeker drone, when it locks on, it will actually beep. So I'll just play the clips back to back and just listen for that beep when the Seeker drone comes at me. So hopefully that clears it up for you. Cold-blooded is quite effective against that Seeker drone, But that doesn't mean that it won't ever shock you. It's just got more of a delay, and it is more likely to go for your teammates that are around you if they don't have Cold-Blooded equipped. So that's pretty much it. That's everything I was able to find that Cold-Blooded had an effect on. And to answer the big question of the video, is Cold-Blooded broken? Technically not, but it's not quite as powerful as many people would like it to be, and I tend to agree with this. I do think Cold-Blooded could use a very slight buff. I do like the fact that Cold-Blooded doesn't make you completely immune to all of the streaks, but I feel like, especially against something like an attack chopper, it should give you a bit more time to shoot that down, because even when I switch to a Cold-Blooded class to actively take down one of those choppers, most of the time I can get that first rocket off no problem, but then the chopper is onto me and it ends up killing me, which I think is just a little bit frustrating when you're switching to that class specifically for that reason, and it's only helping you a little bit when shooting it down. Of course, on the other side of that, as somebody that's calling streaks in, it is kind of nice that if you run into a full team of people using Cold-Blooded, you're still going to get some kills with your streaks. Because if you guys remember from the first weekend of the beta for this game, if I'm not mistaken, Cold-Blooded made you completely immune to streaks, and it was also one of the earlier unlocks, and it was on like the first default class that everybody was using, and therefore attack choppers, for instance, were practically useless. There was actually a big meme going around about the devastating Scorestreaks, because in the trailer they did say that the Scorestreaks were devastating, and we just weren't seeing that. This is actually the reason that Cold-Blooded was changed in the first place. But of course, I'd like to know in the comment section below, do you think they went too far with this and they made it so Cold-Blooded is just not worth running and it's not good enough to counter streaks? Or do you like it in its current state? If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.